Well, hello there to all the good people of Ohio and beyond. This is Aaron Knapp, and you're tuned into Unplugged, broadcasting without permission. This is a place where the truth gets louder and we dig deeper, and where we always remember be lawful, not awful. If you want the full stories, the documents, the videos, and everything they don't want you to see, head on over to AaronKnappUnplugged.com, my new home for every investigation, every episode, and every update. And while you're here, be sure to like the video, follow the page, and hit subscribe, and share this with someone who needs the truth. We're building something real here. We're building something fearless, and we're doing it together. Welcome to Unplugged. Let's kick this thing off.
Plug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask.
Good afternoon there, folks. How you guys doing? Aaron Knapp here. Let me slide myself into the view. What's going on here? There we go. Full screen. All right. How you doing today, guys? I am here. This is Aaron Knapp, Unplugged with Aaron Knapp. And today, here this Saturday afternoon, we're going to tell you a little tale about Aaron. That's what it's going to be about today. I know that I confuse many people out there. You guys don't know what to do with me. One day I'm mad at Aiden Fogel. The next day I'm not. One day I'm supporting something. The next day I'm not. I'm nothing but teachable. Okay? I educate myself as I go. And when it comes to all this stuff that's been going on in Lorain County, I just followed the breadcrumbs. One of the things that I said to everybody is that, again, I initially started this out saying all I needed from McCann was an apology. I really meant that. Aiden said he was sorry about the nasty things he said and did about me online when he was working with other influences. And that's all I needed. I know that's hard to believe, but after this podcast, I think you'll understand why. Because I'm fairly forgiving on all fronts about all things. It doesn't mean that I also let them go. So in some cases, you'll hear me supporting someone, but you'll still hear me calling them out on something. Well, that's what makes me a great advocate. I'm not all or nothing guy. Okay? I can be the guy that says, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that, or, this is illegal, that's illegal. And I can also be the guy that gets his ass kicked at Madhouse. I acknowledge that. It's part of who I am. And in that moment, again, I can't control what other people do. I have a bit of a martyr syndrome. I'll stand there and let you beat on me. I don't feel much of anything anymore. At least in that moment, I felt some pain. So, I truly hope that everybody that accomplished themselves in that, is proud of themselves for that. I'm going to bring this over a little bit more. I mean, honestly, you really should be proud of yourself, Santa Claus. I mean, it's the Christmas season coming up on you. And I feel like you should be proud of that moment of when you and your buddies beat the living shit out of a disabled veteran, threw him on the ground, and used your body, all 260 fat ass pounds of it, to protect me. Thanks for protecting me, Santa. But you guys, you don't understand the things that are at work, right? You only stand your little edge of the world, your little piece of the world, the little things that are going on in Lorain. This episode is going to explain to you why sometimes I may seem like I have a different agenda, but I have one agenda. And you'll know what it is by the end of this podcast, and you'll know who I am. If you guys don't figure it out by that, then I don't know what to tell you. This one's going to be a little personal, might be a little boring to some, but at least it'll give you the understanding. In fact, it's all personal. There's nothing in here that's going to be exciting about Lorain County stuff. I will talk about those things, but I'm not going to break any new news here. The only new news you're getting today is a clear understanding of who I am. So when you look at people who talk to me personally or work with me personally, you'll understand why. I know several people that work with me get a lot of crap about working and or talking to me. Okay. But what those people who give them crap fail to realize is the benefit that I give those people that talk to me. On one hand, I can totally assist you with your, trying to figure things out on your child case and be empathetic and sympathetic and sit with you and talk to you and be a good friend to you. And then when you're sitting on council, I can also turn around and hammer you for maybe voting on a gun law that I don't like. That's the way real life works. And we're going to get into that too. Why I can be friends with someone and still chastise them. Because again, you set people free. When I do it with me, I set me free. So when I talk about the madhouse, I'm setting Aaron free. When I talk about any of the problems, Duran's problems, anyone's problems, even when I brought up the Hall situation and the cruise, you expose these things so you get in front of them. The second that they beat me down in Madhouse, I went on the next day and put something up about it. Of course, I wasn't the one who just randomly shared video footage inside of a place that isn't public, that you have every right to believe that you're not going to be filmed and put online. It wasn't a public street. It wasn't a public forum. It was a place of business where you have an expectation somewhat of some sort of anonymity. And yet Tucker and his ilk felt necessary to just put it all online. And then worse yet, the Chronicle just decided to go with it. Again, not caring who they're putting pictures out about or videos out about, right? Just local candidate gets, they didn't even sell it right. And I'm not even going to get in on that. But again, it happened. That election's over. This is what we're going to talk about today, Aaron. So, I didn't grow up like learning how to feel safe, right? I grew up learning how to read a room. And before I ever even entered it, I could tell by the sound of a door closing whether the night was going to be quiet or violent. By the rhythm of the footsteps, whether it was going to be better to remain visible or disappear. I knew by how long that bottle had been quiet, whether we were going to be in for some calm before the storm. I knew when his truck pulled up. That's what an alcoholic house trains you to do. You don't feel, or you just anticipate. And that anticipation will rewire you beyond all belief. It teaches you that timing is survival, that silence sometimes is strategy, that emotion is a dangerous thing when the rules change without warning. Now, my stepfather was abusive, and not in a way like that I can really summarize clearly. More in a way like it embeds itself in my nervous system and just kind of stays there for decades. All I know is I didn't learn conflict resolution early on in life. I learned conflict and threat detection. And that shapes a young man. And so when you grow up in that kind of environment, you don't really develop a clean sense of self, of who you really are. And you don't just ask, who am I, right? What I asked every day was, which version of me is going to keep me safe and is going to keep the peace today? Which version, right? I had to learn to split myself into pieces. Believe it or not, there was one of these guys once, the quiet one, the compliant one. Oh God, he was such the invisible one, the version that absorbs impact without making noise. And over time, you forget which one is really supposed to be real. I struggle with self-identity because being fully visible was never really safe. That visibility had consequences. Emotions had consequences. Certainty had consequences. I became observant. I became linear. I was controlled. I didn't explode. I absorbed all the energy. Good, bad, ugly, didn't matter. But when you absorb that energy for long enough, eventually it becomes your operating system, you know. And at 17 and a half years old, I couldn't take it anymore. I left. I was already living in an apartment pretty much on my own at that point. We had an apartment, me and my mom together, but she was back staying at my stepdad's a lot. And, and again, this story isn't about her, so we're not going to go into that. But, I joined the military, not because I wanted glory, not because I wanted, I was chasing war. I was chasing any form of structure that I could find. I joined the military and, with the intent of going to the Gulf War. The Gulf War was going on, and people misunderstood that decision, right? People believed that I was running towards danger, that I wanted to go die overseas. I didn't. I wasn't. I was running towards that predictability that the military provided. In my house, the rules were emotional. In the military, they were written. They were solid. It feels safe. It felt safe. There's a chain of command. There's accountability. There were procedures. You knew what happened if you broke those rules, right? You didn't have to guess. Everything in the military is laid out in a manual. I got a little manual over here on survival. It's laid out. And when you grow up guessing for survival, that kind of certainty feels like, I don't know, freedom, oxygen. It was amazing. Eventually I ended up in Germany, as many tankers do. And that changed me in quiet ways. Distance has a way of doing that. When you live outside the U.S., you stop really believing your country is the center of every system. Knowing that, a little side note on that is that I went to Japan and China when I was in 7th or 8th grade for choir. And we spent like 2 weeks over there, stayed at a Japanese family. Granted, I didn't stay there long enough, but initially, even at that young age, I had left the United States and understood. We went to China and Tiananmen Square right before the whole Tiananmen Square thing happened. So when I watched that play out on this news, I was like, I was just there. We stood in line to see Mao Zedong. But hey, I started watching power more from the outside. And I was in the military, so I couldn't really talk about the power. It was part of the structure. Take a breath there. You learn patience, right? Differently. You learn that waiting is not weakness. Timing matters more than noise. You learn that systems always look permanent from the inside. Until you're standing somewhere else, watching them from a distance, right? That lesson never left me. So when I came back to the States, I didn't settle. I was a nomad. I moved. I came back initially to California. Then, I moved a couple of times around California. And then eventually I ended up in Idaho. That's a different story. Then in Ohio. Now, these aren't just addresses. They're entirely different power systems. Each one. Bakersfield is like a city of roughly 400,000 people. And San Jose, nearly 1 million. Rupert, Idaho, it's a small rural community where everyone knows everyone. It's like, sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. Well, that's Rupert. Everybody knows your name. Like 5,000 people, I think. 10,000 in the county. It was the county seat. And it was tiny. And that's where my custody battle started, which that's amazing to do. Then I moved to Avon Lake because of a girl I was in love with and probably arguably still kind of am. Avon Lake, Ohio, about 22,000 people, right? Beautiful place. And then I was commuting back and forth between there and Columbus for OSU. And I had a place in Columbus, close to 1 million again. Then I moved to Lorain, bought a house here, 65,000 people. Now you got to understand that spectrum, it really matters. When you live inside places that range from rural courts that arguably were using I-Court, and I don't understand why we aren't here in Lorain, but to massive muni systems. Oh, that's right, because the commissioners are arguing over whether they use I-Court, Tyler systems or not. Anyway, You stop worshiping any one of them, right? I stopped mistaking local authority for universal authority a long time ago. I stopped treating officials as if they were permanent fixtures because I see how fragile power really is. I've gone up against small town judges. I've gone up in court and represented myself pro se. I've fought for my daughter, the custody of my daughter, and she lives with me now. And I've noticed one thing about every one of these towns, besides its proximity to me, is that it thinks its system is unbreakable until it isn't. They think they're all amazing until they're not, right? The Idaho Magistrate Court, right? James McCann touched a little bit on this when he brought up the vexatious litigant, but this is where I cut my teeth, right? In Rupert, Idaho, I didn't just live there. It was a battleground. My daughter was born in Burley, the town over. Like, this wasn't just a single custody case. It was a 10-year war inside a magistrate court. And this is where I developed all the knowledge that I gained on all of the things that I was working with. Custody cases don't move on heart, right? They move on procedure and procedure alone. That's it. So jurisdiction-wise, standing, service, venue, deadlines, continuances, temporary orders, enforcement motions, emergency hearings, discovery, subpoenas, motions to compel. People think temporary custody is short. Temporary orders can last years, and they did. And during those years, everything becomes leverage. Who controls access? Who controls travel? Who controls communication? Who controls the narrative? Every ruling triggers a response. Every response triggers another filing. You don't lose time in custody court by losing rulings. You lose time by never getting final ones. It drags on forever. And through all of that, I learned one thing that most people never do, and that's that the courts don't move on justice. They move only on properly filed paperwork. That's it. Okay? Let's say that again out loud for the people in the back. Courts don't move on justice, or at least they shouldn't, or they should, but they move on the properly filed paperwork. So if you mess the paperwork up, the rule is that's it. You're done. Sorry. Emotion is an evidence, and outrage is an emotion. Fairness is not self-executing. Fairness is not self-executing. Okay? You can't make it happen. It should just happen. Only procedure will move the machine. And the machine is massive. So there was this jurisdiction warfare going on between all three of the places, right? Eventually, the case, in my case, didn't just move forward. It crossed state lines. It went from Idaho to Utah, Utah to Ohio. And here's what most people don't understand. Family law is not universal. It's state specific. Each state recalculates what it will recognize, what it will enforce, what it will ignore, what must be relitigated, what survives, what resets. People don't think cases transfer. Or people actually think cases transfer. They don't, right? Every new state rebuilds the case under their new statutory authority. I went 3 states, 3 different legal cultures, 3 different interpretations of power. That taught me a rule I've never violated since. If you rely on fairness, you will lose. But if you rely on procedure, you'll survive. By the time Ohio became part of this picture, I no longer trusted verbal assurances. I trusted filings and timestamps, statutes and records. That custody case didn't just reshape my family. It permanently rewired the way I see every institution, right? And, before I skip into this next section here, I'm going to just say this. My first attorney in that case was McCord Larson in Rupert, Idaho, and he later became a district attorney of Burley, working for then prosecutor of that town. Now, I went through my first battles with law enforcement. I was friendly with my local police force, but not so friendly with the Burley police force because my ex had friends or whatever over there, and it just, small town, turned into a train wreck, right? She was part of the LDS church. The LDS church had a lot of members. It was a long struggle, okay? My second attorney, Elizabeth Burr Jones, actually, after my mom paid her all this money, she, the one day my mom was in town, couldn't show up. because of a windstorm. And then in the end, she never filed closing arguments. Come to find out that the lawyer that educated me on how to be a lawyer, who was Brett Anthony, and he's this big shot lawyer in a town of 5,000 people. And so he taught me, because I read all his motions, and law is just copyright, right? You're just copying everybody's stuff. The law doesn't encourage outside the box thinking. The law encourages writing motions and procedurally the way that they need to be written. And so he educated me on that through this whole process. But that lawyer that I had, Elizabeth Burjohn, she never filed closing arguments in my case. So I lost. And then I had to pay 5 years of back child support to my ex for a time that I had the child. And statements were made in court documents and filings and emergency things and custody evaluations that even the judge in my case said, it's notable that the father was there at all times when the mother was either unwilling or unable to parent the minor child. And yet still, nothing. I fought during COVID. I kept her during COVID. Ended up in Sherry Glass's court. I fought with Sherry Glass. I told the judge in Idaho, he said, well, you're going to go to jail. And I said, well, you let me know how that works out, Your Honor. With all due respect, you are in another state. It doesn't work that way. And I was right. It did not work that way. Although Lorain police wanted to make it work that way. And then later I see Sherry Glass at an event. She says, your daughter's right where she should be. Okay. That's not ex parte. Okay, whatever. The case was closed. So it didn't really matter. But I had to fight in Idaho. And then I had to convince the judges like Brer Rabbit, like, don't throw me in the briar patch. Like I kept saying, Ohio, send it to Ohio, send it to Ohio, send it to Ohio. And then at the last minute, I tricked them and I was like, all right, send it to Utah. And they're like, wait, what? Okay, yeah, we'll send it to Utah. Little did they know I already had a lawyer hired in Utah. I was ready to go and had custody of the child in 2 months by having him submit my motions and ghostwrite for me. So we were just done. Boom, insert gain custody, because in that case, the main crux of it was during an ongoing custodial evaluation by CPS in which my ex was found to have been guilty of child abuse. She moved out of the state against court orders, crossed state lines, violated the court order, enrolled her in an online school during COVID, and just kept her there. And the same judge that said that all her services were in Idaho and she couldn't move out of Idaho and couldn't come live with me, suddenly just let that happen. Like when it was her, it was fine. When it was me, no. See, that's the difference. That's where I learned, yeah, sure, I may be online saying, well, who's a jury of their peers? But do I believe that it's not a setup? No, I don't ever believe anything's not a setup anymore because I've seen the way that it works. People are still human. They still lie. They still cheat. They still do whatever they do to protect their best interest, their money, their time, their money. So I went to Ohio State. It gave me the blueprint, right? It didn't just educate me. It calibrated me. Social work at OSU has handed me the blueprint. Power dynamics, institutional protection, gatekeeping, reputation management, silencing through delay. Okay? That's when I understood what community change actually means. Community change is slow, right? It's unpopular. And it's ugly. Misunderstood while it's happening and only praised after the damage is deniable or undeniable. And social work did not make me soft. It made me exact. It taught me that behavior follows incentive. What are you doing? Talking. I don't know. That silence is not neutrality. It's a position. And once you learn that, you stop confusing. Wait, hold on. It taught me that behavior follows incentive and that institutions protect reputation more than people. The silence is not neutrality. It's a position. And once you learn that, you stop confusing comfort with safety, right? So change agents, kings, and exposures happens every day. We see that. You may hate the change agent, this guy. You will appreciate the change. I don't attack people. I expose weaknesses publicly so that they can never be weaponized privately. Okay? Hear that. I expose weaknesses publicly so they can never be weaponized privately. Blackmail only works in the shadows, folks. Exposure will turn your weaknesses into armor. That creates stronger leaders or it removes them. That's it. Again, exposure turns weaknesses into armor. I don't create victims. I make kings. So, and when kings rot, I remove them. Simple. Procedurally, it's chessboard. I'm not reactive like they are. I'm placing pieces. I'm linear. And I have the time, folks. Meaningful change takes time. I pick my cases on merit, not popularity, not revenge, and definitely not emotion. There's zero emotion. Merit is the only filter that outlives pressure, okay? And you can say, hate, truth, whatever. I don't hate anyone, okay? No one. Not a single one of you out there. I don't hate anybody. To hate someone, I must love them first. I need to know these people. I don't. Now, if you take the time to know me, as we're doing right now, I'll take the time to know you. Some people have come into my life that have taken the time to know me, and I've shared these things with them. I'm sharing these things now because I'm just feeling the attacks ramp up on everyone that knows me. And people just have a certain idea about me. At least this way, you won't have that idea anymore. Truth doesn't require affection. It requires documentation, folks. And so when I look at these public acts and these attacks and this private fixation on me, it's not surprising, right? People attack me publicly. People dismiss my work publicly. They talk about my podcast here and they say it doesn't matter. But yet then they all go read what I write. They all watch what I publish. They all read it. They gossip about it. They track it. I get public rejection, private obsession. Just like children. Fine. But when coordinating outcomes and not trying to punish people, we chastise and praise behavior to shape outcomes. That's not cruelty. This is what we call conditioning. Okay? We condition people. It's never been just about you or me or anyone. Even though I know as a therapist, everyone seems to think it's about them. It's always about the change. Change agents, always about the change. So the house taught me to read the room, right? My house growing up. The military taught me structure. Idaho taught me procedure and the law. Ohio's taught me power. OSU gave me the blueprint, and everything after this is just execution. And by the time I finished fighting through Idaho courtrooms and I crossed into Ohio law, something else had already shifted underneath everything. Before the paperwork took over my life, before the filings became my language, before statutes replaced emotion, my nervous system had already changed. People think that the legal transformation came first. It didn't. The neurological one did. And traumatic brain injuries are what started all of that. I'm going to unplug this real quick because it's annoying me. That brings us to our 29-minute mark. Yeah, I should probably pause here for station identification real quick before we start what I'm calling Act 2, where we talk about why and how, what's happened to me and why I do what I do, why I seem some ways this way that I seem. But really quick, I'd just like to give a shout out to our sponsors. Here at Unplugged with Aaron Knapp, we like to thank our sponsors. We have a few unofficial sponsors tonight, and they are definitely not paid sponsorships. I want to throw out there a big thank you to Joseph Jones and Eric Jones of the Lorraine Daily and the Vermilion Daily. They have a local news page. You should check them out. They do plenty of great work broadcasting all the news that is the news that you want to have in Lorain and Lorain County. So check them out. Also, please, if you need any legal services, feel free to reach out to Robert Gargas. You can find him listed online. He's a fine attorney and comes highly recommended by yours truly. And last but not least, I want to mention D&C Radio. Please make sure you check out one of the up-and-coming internet hip-hop stations and all of their shows. They put on a lot of shows. You have the Never Outdone show. You also have the Eric Bowen show, Speak Up, Speak Out. So please make sure you guys check them out as well if you're looking for your latest and up-to-date hip-hop artistry. Thank you for tuning in. This has been a non-paid sponsorship brought to you by Unplugged with Aaron Knapp.
Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting with...
All right, that brings us back to number 2, or section 2 of this podcast here. We're going to talk a little bit about TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, and how they affect people. So a TBI, or traumatic brain injury, this is going to be a little medical, I guess, in a way, or might not be interesting to a lot of people, but it doesn't arrive like sadness. It arrives more like misalignment, right? And so what you end up with, your emotional timing sort of becomes off. Your tolerance for chaos completely disappears. Your patience shrinks into like clean edges. And so your brain stops buffering with nonsense. You don't become slower per se. You become sharper in fewer directions, I guess. You stop being able to emotionally multitask. You start demanding a clear, clean signal. Noise becomes intolerable. Certain noises especially. And you develop a scanner that never really powers down. PTSD doesn't make you afraid. It installs a permanent background scan. Your body starts reading threat before your thoughts even catch up to it, right? You assess posture, tone, breathing. Where are the exits? Who's lying? Who's stalling? Why are they stalling? Why are they lying? It never shuts off. It's like this barrage of things that comes at you. And once that scanner's been installed, it's installed emotional spontaneity, and it becomes a liability. Because you stop really trusting feeling and you start trusting pattern. So I work on that all the time. And that's the part that suffers for me the most, is there's this emotional disconnect. And it's the part people misunderstand. It's not that I lack emotion. Emotion just really lost jurisdiction over me, I guess. It doesn't control me. It no longer governs my decisions. The feeling becomes a non-voting observer. That's it. It doesn't have a place. Logic took control. Memory took control. Structure took control. People started saying, like, you don't seem upset. You don't get angry. You talk like a report. And they're right. And they were missing the point. That's the problem. Memory replaced feeling. Once emotion lost control, something else moved in. Memory. Not nostalgia, not regret, not longing. Exact recall is more like it. Dates, timelines, word tracking, shifts in story, contradictions across time. Memory became my anchor because my memory can be verified. Feelings cannot. How I feel doesn't matter. What I remember, what happened, the facts. And so eventually medicine put language to what I already knew. The VA started slowly diagnosing me as I started going, and PTSD, traumatic brain injury, tinnitus, spinal injury. And it wasn't an identity. It was a diagnostic confirmation of the new operating system, right? My nervous system no longer ran on comfort. It ran on control and predictability. And now that's why I speak in fact and law only, because facts don't fluctuate with the mood. Because law doesn't care how you feel. Because statutes don't respond to intimidation. Because records don't gaslight you. Because feelings don't argue with you emotionally. And they either exist or they don't. And, and people will call me cold. Cold is an emotional absence. This is emotional containment, right? Like, emotion exists. It simply doesn't steer. I don't know how better to explain it. Like, it's on the bus, but in the back. It doesn't ever get to come up front. Because that emotion is problematic for me. What steers is process, sequence, procedure, like verification, consistency. Do what you say. I did not become cruel. I became precise. And I like preciseness. And that's why I strive to be precise. And if I get something wrong, say a date or a time or a year, I'll correct it. In fact, I like making those mistakes because it shows me I'm human. Threats do not move me. Threats stopped working on me a long time ago because threats are emotional tools. I don't move on emotional tools anymore. They just don't move me. I don't care. I move on deadlines. I move on service. I move on venue. I move on jurisdiction, okay? I move on standing and on record. That makes intimidation useless. So, and I do what I say I'm going to do, right? Here's my operating logic. This is it right here. If I say I'm going to file something, you know what I do? I file it. If I say I'm going to document something, you know what I do? I document. If I say I will escalate, I escalate. Escalate. Because I'm not angry, guys. Because follow through restores internal alignment when trauma destroys it. Completion is regulation. Completion is regulation, guys. That's all I know. Process is grounding. And grounding is important to someone with TBIs and PTSD. Now, people are always saying, people say I'm hunting for people, right? No, hunters will chase their prey. I complete things. If nothing's improper is happening, right, then nothing I'm going to do is ever going to threaten you. Documentation doesn't damage clean systems ever. Transparency does not harm ethical leaders. It doesn't. Only concealed instability reacts. That's it. If you're doing the right thing, nothing will bother you. And I can't be emotionally manipulated. You can't not guilt me into silence. You can't flatter me into retreat. You can't provoke me into deviation because the emotional levers no longer are attached to anything. You can pull them all you want, but there's nothing back there the strings are gone. PTSD cut those wires out. TBI removed the buffer. All that remains is execution. That's it. Execution of the mission. And, people think that, that my intensity equals some sort of hatred. It doesn't. I don't hate. I don't hate anyone. Ever. I don't even hate my stepdad. And I did love him. In a weird way. As we do all our abusers. But to hate, you have to first love someone. Okay? You got to first love them. I don't love these systems. I don't love these officials. I don't know them. Well, I know the systems now. I know their conduct. I know their conduct's measurable. Now, if you come to me honestly, I'm going to talk to you. I have all of them. If you tell truth, I'll engage. I had a 3-hour conversation with Aiden Fogel one night. I had a 2-3-hour conversation with Katie Byer. I'll engage with people online as long as, we agree to disagree at the end of the day. And if you tell the truth, I'm going to engage with you. But if you lie, I'm going to document that shit. I'm going to put it out. Not to punish you, to preserve accuracy. What I said, what you said, that's it. And people misread me as dangerous. They interpret, systems will interpret stillness as a threat. Especially when that stillness doesn't break under pressure. doesn't seek approval because I don't, doesn't retreat under ridicule because I won't. Consistency disrupts narrative control. What trauma is actually built in me, it didn't make me reckless. It made me disciplined. PTSD did not make me fragile. It made me emotionally optional. It made emotion optional, right? Like traumatic brain injury, TBI, it didn't make me confused. It made the noise intolerable to me. And that's all they're throwing is noise. There's a line that divides the old me and the new me a little bit. The old version just felt first and justified later, like a lot of humans do. But that version of me died quietly a long time ago. The one that remains, the social worker version, the Aaron version, the veteran version, again, I'm a combination of all these things. I'm not just a social worker. I document first. The version that remains files after he documents and then speaks last. I never deviate. So, by the time that these injuries had rewired my nervous system, I still believed one thing. I believed that if I followed the rules professionally, right, that if I stayed inside our ethical code, if I respected my licensure, if I complied with the reporting obligations, the system would protect me as it promised. I believe that shit. That belief was dead ass wrong. I mean, yeah, they protected my license. But, when Applewood cans you because of what the courts say, and Applewood holds almost every job in the county, how the hell am I going to work? It wasn't naive when I held it. It was trained into me. I'm not even sure I still have unlearned it. But, when you become a licensed professional, licensure up here is not a title. It's a contract with the public. It says, I will be governed. I will be measurable. I will submit to investigation, which I did twice. I will operate under certain standards that are required of me by the law and by ORC and by my own profession. I took that shit serious. Like, dead serious. I even asked my boss when this whole thing went down, he asked me to violate the ethical code. She's like, no, I'm just saying they could choose not to work with you. So take that for what it is. I trained, took all the education, I certified. I've completed hours upon hours of continuing education. I've submitted to supervision. I worked cases that were complex, emotionally heavy, legally sensitive. I didn't operate in gray areas. I operated in documented space. That's it. Because in regulated professions, records are survival. You have to document everything. And you can't do what I'm doing if you have this weird background that everyone seems to think I had, trespassing and weird and all this stuff. No. Screw off. You don't know me. So the complaint and how the system's actually activated, when James activated that complaint against me, when it arrived, it was formal, serious, and it triggered the system. Here's what you don't understand about professional complaints, right? The accusation activates instantly. So the second James did that, the accusation activated. The exoneration, though, if it does eventually moves much slower. You become a risk, a liability, a silence problem. Before any finding is made, before evidence is weighed, before truth is confirmed, process presumes the danger first, right? I immediately got notified and I immediately got suspended. Don't pass go, don't collect $200, don't keep getting paid. That hit me right in the money, right off the bat. Thanks, James. The investigation didn't feel like due process. It felt like containment. Phone calls that avoided substance, questions that implied conclusions, silences where clarification should have lived. You're not treated as innocent until proven guilty. You're treated as radioactive until paperwork clears. And during that time, employment shifts, access changes, tone changes, support evaporates, gone. Stain arrives immediately. The clearing, though, if it ever comes, arrives quietly. So in this case, the complaint was closed. No substantiation, no ethical violation, no finding of wrongdoing, right? I don't want to point out that that really pissed McCann off. Lo and behold, social workers investigated social workers and found them innocent, just like you do with the police. But that being said, I wrote the truth. That's why your complaint wasn't verified, because you were a liar. But I just want to point out, the call that I got was funny, because you're not supposed to tell you really who called, but they're like, So this is the investigator from the social work board. We were just wondering. We want to let you know you got a complaint against your license because they have to let you know that. We were just wondering. Sorry, this phone. We were just wondering what exactly you did to make a chief of police so interested in social work that he looked up that we had a board and then called said board to make a complaint against you and then actually followed up with the writing complaint. Never really has that happened. And he did have to look all that up, Mr. Brightsides. He had to look everything up. He looked it up. He started investigating, and then he started saying all this stuff. And he started saying this, that, and the other. He was looking up what social workers do, trying to figure out if I was breaking social worker ethical code. So all while I'm making a couple of complaints against his officers, he's undermining me and my own board. And I would have never gotten those emails if McCann hadn't sent them through his public email address. That's because he's a moron. But anyway, on paper, when I won and it found no finding of wrongdoing, that should have restored everything, right? In practice, though, the damage was already done. Institutions remember accusations longer than they remember outcomes. So separation didn't arrive as punishment. It arrives as restructuring, as organizational shifts, best interest of all parties. Language is how systems sanitize force. Unemployment followed, and then another system activated, the benefit system. No, which doesn't speak or ask the truth be told. It asks that you can prove it with documents that match the forms, right? Retaliation is never announced. It arrives with withheld responses, missing emails, extended delays, ambiguous authority, disappearing accountability, and it always wears professional language, and it never uses the word retaliation. But the psychological effects of that and impact of an institutional abandonment, that's the part people fail to realize. Losing a job is survivable. Losing your identity is destabilizing. When your identity is built on a professional ethics and the institution withdraws without wrongdoing, your nervous system cannot reconcile that. It does the only thing it can. So it re-anchors to process instead of people. So that's why I stopped believing in the professional protection. The experience taught me that licensure does not protect you. Ethics do not protect you. Compliance will never protect you. Documentation does. That was the one thing they had books on it. That was the only thing they taught us in social work that they hammered into us. Documentation protects you, and only documentation. Document. And there was a birth somewhere in there, procedural combat, right? This is where my operating model fully shifted again. I no longer relied on professional goodwill or cared about other social workers' feelings, administrative fairness, or the internal review processes of the prosecutor or the sheriffs or the police or the city or Ray Carrion or anyone. I began to rely exclusively on public records, statutory rights, written response obligations, and service rules, deadlines, appeal chains. It's not escalation, it's adaptation, okay? So when I stopped being answered informally, every silence became a data point. Why explanations vanished, delay became a statement. When internal doors closed, public law opened. That's why I don't ask for permission anymore. It's the name of my damn broadcast, without permission. I don't ask or request access. I invoke my authority. Not personal authority, statutory authority. The shift is permanent. Okay, that's it. And it wasn't a breakdown, it's a rebuild. People might frame this as a collapse, but it wasn't a breakdown or a collapse. System migration from internal trust to external enforcement. So, they come to the end of this last act here, this third act, like when the ethics process ended without substantiation, but the retaliation didn't end with it, that was the moment I stopped believing institutions self-correct. That was the moment that I became external to them. I went from a transition, right? Leaving the internal world to the external world. From professional protection failed. Like when it failed, I didn't panic. I pivoted. Once the insider channels closed, the only one arena remained for me, and that's public law. And that's where we're at now. So up until that point, everything that had happened had been inside the institution, quietly, professionally, behind closed doors. That ended right then and there. Not because I wanted attention, as some will say, but because silence has become the evidence. from my first to my last records request, the first thing I learned in public law is this, is that something happened, there's a record. If there's no record, someone made a decision to not create one. So I began requesting everything. Emails, policies, body cams, security footage, internal memos, training manuals, retention schedules, right? Not to accuse, to establish a baseline reality for how this operating system works. Because once reality is documented, the narrative control weakens. I've got their reality. I know what their operating system says. I've read their manuals, all of that. And that's why records will always terrify these institutions, right? They're scared of us giving us records. They don't fear confrontation, right? They don't fear us coming and saying anything at city council, right? They don't give a crap about that because it doesn't matter. What they fear is paperwork. They fear chronology because chronology reveals who acted first, who acted late, who withheld, who altered, who ignored. One missing email can unravel 10 public statements. It kind of gets us to police, policy versus practice. So police departments survive on one assumption, that most people won't read their policies. I read theirs. I will say this, a little side note on this. I had to fight to get these from Joseph Levesque. He said they were supposed to be redacted, but Jack Hall candidate told me they weren't, and he gave me all the tools to fight them, to get them. So I fought them, and then finally they said, we'll release them to you, but then they would only release them because I requested them. I said, fine, I'll just have to request them one at a time. So I did. Finally, Joseph gave all of them to me. He said he had to redact a couple. He redacted maybe 2-3 lines in the entire set of all the policies he sent me via PDF. I posted them all online. Only to them, 6 months later or whatever, when McCann left, posting all of them online as they should have from the beginning. So I read their policies, but they didn't want me to have those because I have eidetic memory. I'll remember it, and then I'll know what you did was not okay, like smoking in police vehicles. Yeah, I know there's a policy on that. I read their policy, but there's lots of little things like police can't cuss. No, it says they can't use profanity. I ran on that. I wanted to change that rule because it opens the city up to litigation, which I try to stop. Because I don't want to see my tax dollars go to you guys paying attorneys. Even in my case, you should have just used the insurance and settled out of court. But you want to buy attorneys that are tied to big name cases like Rosenbaum for your guys. Anyway, I digress. I didn't argue from opinion. I argued from their own manuals. Use of force, citizen encounters, public recordings, building access, public space authority, retaliation prohibitions. It's all listed in their manuals. You can see every last thing that they're required to do. I do it with the schools as well, and my daughter and our IEP. If you know these things, you're educated, and an educated population is what scares them, right? That's all I'm trying to do is educate people. And here's what happens when policy meets documentation, right? They stop debating and they start delaying. Delay is resistance in professional language, right? Can't delay. And the courts see it that way. Now we're going to talk about becoming the problem. There's always a moment when the operator becomes the problem. Not because they lied, not because they were wrong. Probably just because, they were consistent. And they told the truth. Consistency removes discretion. Discretion is where power hides. So once you remove this discretion, authority feels threatened. And that's when that label changes. You're no longer a concerned citizen. You're no longer a professional. You're not an advocate. No. You become a problem. Well, guess what, bitches? This guy's the whole problem. Prosecutors have done nothing but gatekeep and layer. The prosecutors in these things are not neutral adjudicators. They're the gatekeepers. They decide who is charged, what is declined, what is delayed, what is quietly buried, what is reframed as civil. And once your work touches that layer, transparency becomes conditional. The illusion of open government is that public officials will talk about transparency, but transparency ends where liability begins. That's the unspoken rule. Records are available until they aren't. Footage exists until it's exempt. Emails are stored until retention becomes convenient and they're destroyed. The law allows requests. Institutions exploit every pause inside of it. For example, I just got a 10-month-old request the other day on records for mutual aid agreements between Sheffield Lake and Lorraine that show why Rocky Radish shouldn't be able to be a mayor and a prosecuting attorney in Lorraine. But hey, I digress. So council's done their own fair share of things, right? City council chambers are not considered public forums. They're managed speech environments, time limits, removal discretion, microphone control, agenda placement, selective enforcement. It only takes one removal to transform debate into deterrence. Once deterrence becomes visible, participation collapses. That's not democracy. It's not. It's more like performance control. And that's the moment when you stop being a person. Like there's a moment when you stop being a person or a complainant, right? You become the test case. How they handle you is not about you anymore. It's about what can they get away with next. It's about that is when pressure intensifies, not overtly, but procedurally. So eventually documentation reaches a fork in the road, and either the system corrects or the system forces that escalation. Litigation's not aggression, folks. It's formalized refusal to be ignored. Once a case is filed, timelines lock, statements become discoverable, positions freeze, contradictions become permanent. That's when behavior changes. And that's why I don't bluff. I never file as a threat. I file as a conclusion to my words. That's why people misread me. They think litigation is emotional leverage. For me, it's procedural closure, which I always need closure. And power hates documentation. Power thrives on a narrative, their narrative. Documentation thrives on preservation. Narratives can be revised. Records cannot. That's why systems attempt to exhaust documenters before they defeat them. They just wear us out. They try to make us just stop. And someone pointed out recently, I wish I had that kind of money, time, whatever. Yeah, I have that kind of time because Chief McCann got me fired and I can't seem to get a job locally anymore as somebody with licensures that they seem to be begging for jobs for. But so I do this. I'm still going to do my social work bit, which is this. Once the lawsuit's filed, once that first one's filed, once the first viral document circulates, once the first investigation becomes searchable, you never go back to it being a private conflict. Look at the thing over in Sheffield with Rocky. I mean, dude, I bet you $5. $5 says he wishes he never wrote that cease and desist to John Moreau. Because from that moment on, everything's permanent. It's in a record. That's why I didn't retreat. Most people retreat when the pressure rises, right? I advanced. And it's not a retreat. It's a strategic withdrawal. I didn't advance to punish anyone. I advanced to finish what I started. Retreat would have required pretending like none of it happened. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to live inside a lie. Not for you or anyone. I don't care enough about anyone to live a lie. I love myself enough to not live a lie. And what these institutions and these people have now learned about me, and I hope all of you, is I don't bluff. I don't threaten. I don't perform under anger. And I don't trade favors to anyone. Right? I don't get bought out. I'm never going to do like anything that just because, someone wants me to. I complete what I say I'm going to complete. That's it. I'm single-minded. Public law is the only neutral arena that they're that's out there now, because professional systems have obviously failed. All the private grievances I made have failed. Silence definitely fails. Public law has remained. Once I stepped fully into that, there was no return into the shadows once I started filing. As one sheriff said once, yeah, good, file complaints because now we know who you are. Exactly. That's what they want to know. And then they want to send moles to get into your feeds, to get into your life. The moment conflict goes public, the rules all change. Private pressure becomes social pressure. Internal pushback becomes external retaliation. Quiet resistance becomes visibility and visible hostility. This is where most people break, because the retaliation phase is not about law. It's about isolation. They isolate you. It looks like, not like from a movie scene. It's like a dramatic threat. It's like thousands of denials, ignored emails, selective enforcement, leaked narratives, sudden concerned parties. Lorraine Ritchie. Speaking of her, weaponized rumors, disappearing allies, strategic silence. It wears a professional language, right? It pretends it like it's coincidence. Oh, but they just happen to get fired. But it never is. I mean, again, I know people get a little upset with me about like the only certain people that I go after, but public smear as a tool of containment. And they've used it, so I've used it. I've leaned on it. Once institutions realize they can't control your paperwork, though, they try to control your reputation. They don't debate your documents anymore. They debate your character. They've been doing this on me forever. The record's not wrong, but you're unstable. You're obsessed. You're dangerous. You're a lunatic. You're a madman. You do this. You do that. Smear campaigns are designed to do one thing only: make engaging with you socially costly. Not legally risky, socially risky, right? Because as soon as you engage with me, then suddenly you start getting phone calls from friends or supposed friends and supporters. People attack you. In some cases, because your name's similar to the guy that you hang out with, they think you're the same person. Garen and Aaron, Garen and Aaron, Aaron and Garen, Aaron and Garen, Garen and Aaron, Aaron and Garen. Try saying that 15 times fast. But yeah, socially risky, meaning if say Amber starts wanting to talk to me, everyone wants to just go beat her up. I tell you this, if you guys don't like her talking to me, which, you know, it's obvious you don't, I would suggest that you tell me to my face. Because, see, you guys are all cool with beating on people, but nobody wants to have words with people. I'm not going to ever beat any of you in a physical fight. You want to debate me? You want to have an argument? You want to have factually sound discussions? I will dominate you in every one of those. Every last one, from Mr. Patrick Riley on down. And I've proven myself time and time again. Sure, you can kick my ass, but you're not going to beat me on paper. Ever. So, again, don't hate people that are smart enough to utilize somebody. Jack Hall was smart enough to utilize me. Other people have been smart enough to utilize me. Why not Amber? Why not 80? Why not Moreau? Why not anyone? Because if your cause is just, I will support it. That's it. And again, when I say things, think about this. Who better to support John Moreau and Aiden Fogel than a guy that trashed them? Because he got trashed by them. Who better to now support the idea that maybe it was a setup with what are you sending me, dude? I don't even know what that means, but so the bottom line is that all these people, it becomes socially risky to associate with me because everybody attacks. Attack. So I don't like that. It's not fair. It's not nice. You guys are, if you support these people, you'll understand why they would want someone like me in their corner, and assume that if if you assume, but threats don't always sound like threats, folks, right? Sometimes threats sound like, hey, watch yourself. You don't know what you're messing with. You're going to regret this. Sometimes they sound like you're ruining your life. You'll never work again. No one will touch you professionally. People have said those. That's all true. Fear is the most effective when it pretends to be advice. And why fear tactics don't work on me is fear works on people who still move emotionally. I don't do that. I don't move emotionally. PTSD removed the fear as a guiding force. TBI replaced hesitation as a buffer. Once fear no longer steers, intimidation becomes useless. And here's the part you don't that you know people don't prepare you for. You don't lose enemies, right? You lose acquaintances. People who once nodded quietly will disappear. People who once supported you will stop answering your messages, right? People who once benefited from your stability withdraw, Jack. Not because you changed, but because you made consequences visible. Isolation becomes a weapon, right? It's not accidental, it's applied. Meetings stop being scheduled, or invitations dry up, or public affiliations quietly dissolve. They don't exile you loudly, they let you disappear socially. And they use online harassment as crowd control. They use social media. Social media becomes an auxiliary enforcement arm. Mockery, dogpiling, screenshots, public speculation, dehumanization disguises humor. Not to refute the claims, right? But to discourage others from standing next to you. You get treated like a warning label. You stop being seen as a person and you become a warning example. How they handle you becomes a lesson to others. And why do you think they said to Michelle Hung, we're going to Lundy her? That's what happens when you speak up, right? That's what happens to you when you don't stop. It's what happens if you document. Deterrence doesn't require imprisonment. It just requires social exile. But that is not going to break me. Because here's the flaw in that retaliation logic. It assumes the target still needs approval. I don't need your fucking approval. My approval system is internal. It's aligned still in my ethical code. It's in my procedure. It's alignment based, right? I'm lawful good if we're playing D&D. As long as my actions match my stated intent, your opinion no longer governs me or matters to me. And that's why retaliation really just proves impact. I don't see retaliation as a signal of weakness. It's a signal of contact. You don't swing at things that miss you. Right? You swing at what reaches what is protected. You swing what reaches into your protected space. That's why they swing at me. Not because, as most people say, I don't matter, but because I swing into their protected spaces. I'm nothing but the patron saint of lost causes. And why do you think I want to support JD now? Because now I do see what they have probably done that couldn't be seen at the time. But I also don't step away from my feelings on what happened. You know, we all have to own up to our own misgivings and the things that we did that people use against us. So by consistently hammering into the public perception, this 100K thing, I take it away as their weapon. It's not their weapon anymore. Because again, I keep saying it, and in the end, should he have known? Probably. But who really did that was the commissioners. I've been saying that all along. The lawyers, the commissioners, petty court. You have to look at all the players. But again, those names don't get noticed. And in the grand scheme, the buck always does stop with the highest official. If you don't know, you should have known, maybe. But by calling out that you might have been bamboozled, I get to help soften that blow. But you still got to take the hit. You still did it, or were the leader when it happened. It's not unhealthy. It's literally, it actually frees you. Like I said, it's the truth that armors you. Yeah, I did that. I was bamboozled by a snake in the grass, freaking succubus. And I believed that we were in love, and she manipulated me and recorded me. She did all this stuff, and she made me look a certain way in the public eye. You come out and you say that, and you free yourself from the chains of that fucking shit. Like, she manipulated you. I get it, bro. Out of anybody, I get that. Like, as men, we get it. We sometimes get misled. But I keep asking the same questions about this new prosecutor's office. Why is it that most of JED's staff stayed on? Why I'm still dealing with the same people? So the mechanism didn't change, just the person in charge and the things that they would do. And so if you look back, and I'm looking back at JD's record, and I see what he did with, working with the Ohio 4, and I see what he did working with Amber, which again, none of this stuff really came out until the very end of when he was at campaigning stage. It really did just look like fluff. But then take into account, I was also really mad at Rich Resendez as well, and he felt like the connection between the two of them, and there was other stuff going on there. I recognize now that there's so many different parts in play, but you gotta dissect the machinery before you can figure it all out. So I just talk truth, but persistence is always rebranded as obsession by those when they're being challenged, right? Obsession sounds so unhealthy. Persistence sounds legitimate. Language is what controls perception. And this is why I try to articulate everything, because the government will choose the language that, delegitimizes, see, I can't even say it, delegitimizes you. But I still show up because retreat would validate that tactic. Retreat teaches you that social pressure works. Presence teaches systems that documentation outlasts intimidation. And that's what I've learned about human behavior. I've learned that most people don't oppose injustice. They avoid the people who confront it. Most people don't oppose injustice. They avoid the people who confront it. Not because the people are wrong, but because proximity to the conflict feels risky. That's the line where retaliation stops working, folks. Like, that's when it stops. The target stops seeking reinstatement. They stop seeking apology. They stop seeking reconciliation and focus exclusively on the record. That's what I live now, right? I'm not asking for any of those things anymore. Retaliation did not turn me. Threats did not turn me. Smears did not turn me. They only removed false incentives. What remained was unmovable. So, and I'm going to take a quick break right now and play a sponsorship ad just because I need to take a drink and take a breath. Here at Unplugged with Aaron Knapp, we like to thank our sponsors. We have a few unofficial sponsors tonight, and they are definitely not paid sponsorships. I want to throw out there a big thank you to Joseph Jones and Eric Jones of the Lorraine Daily and the Vermilion Daily. They have a local news page. You should check them out. They do plenty of great work broadcasting all the news that is the news that you want to have in Lorain and Lorain County. So check them out. Also, please, if you need any legal services, feel free to reach out to Robert Gargas. You can find him listed online. He's a fine attorney and comes highly recommended by yours truly. And last but not least, I want to mention D&C Radio. Please make sure you check out one of the up-and-coming internet hip-hop stations and all of their shows. They put on a lot of shows. You have the Never Outdone show. You also have the Eric Bowen show, Speak Up, Speak Out. So please make sure you guys check them out as well if you're looking for your latest and up-to-date hip-hop artistry.
Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain.
All right, guys. Got that sweater off. I was feeling a little hot around the collar. We're going to get back here with this next part, transitioning into when conflict turns physical. So this is a line that most people believe will never be crossed, right? They believe that the line between paperwork and physical harm. And for a long time, my conflicts lived in the records, just in the filings, in the council chambers, and in the emails, and in courtrooms. Then one night, that line disappeared. The conflict became physical. So, I'm not going to tell it like it's a movie. There was no cinematic buildup, no dramatic monologue. It was just normal life. And then there was impact. That's what matters, not how it felt. What matters is what happened. I was assaulted, not argued with, not removed quietly, not warned, struck, injured, left with documented harm. And when something like that happens, there are only two paths. You either spiral emotionally or you document procedurally. I documented. In the immediate aftermath, I went and got medical. I got medical documentation, exams, imaging, records, photos. The injury in real life isn't, real in the legal system until it's written down by someone with credentials. So that's where I went. And then I went to law enforcement. Statement, timeline, location, witness potential, sequence, No performance, no dramatics, just chronology. That chronology is what the court can audit. Now, filing wasn't about revenge. People are assuming that report an assault is about punishment, and sometimes it is, right? But sometimes it's just about preventing the narrative erasure. If I didn't report, the event becomes rumor, then memory, then myth, then nothing. Or it just becomes the bar's replay as a joke on some podcast, someone else's pain. But everybody's okay with that, right? It's okay laughing at me and putting it in the newspaper and the front page, right? But reporting makes it permanent, not emotional. Permanent. And so investigations are quiet. There are no updates. There are no briefings. There are no shared strategy. There's only silence punctuated by document requests. And you don't see justice in motion. You see delay in motion. Now, what no charges filed actually meant was this is the phase people misunderstand. No charges filed. It does not mean nothing happened. It does not mean no injury occurred. It does not mean the event didn't take place. It just means the prosecutor decision maker declined to advance the case into criminal court. That's a procedural outcome, right? That's not a factual declaration. I believe it was Amanda Deary who refused to do anything. So, thanks, Amanda. You and your hubby Chris, who seems to have a monopoly over there in Illyria doing stuff. You couldn't. No, you just let some 230-pound Santa Claus I have pictures of Jennifer Battistelli sitting in his lap, beat the living shit out of me, and you guys did nothing. Nothing. Not something, but absolutely fucking nothing. Gotcha. That's not justice, folks. That's when a prosecutor makes a decision to decline and or advance the case into criminal court. That's procedural outcome. It's not factual declaration. So emotional justice wants validation. Procedural justice wants sufficiency of evidence that can survive trial. They're not the same. You can be harmed and they can still see no charges, right? That gap breaks a lot of people, but it didn't break me. I already lived inside the difference between what's true and what's chargeable. And so I didn't weaponize the outcome. I didn't treat no charges as defeat. I treated it as information. Information about thresholds, about discretion, information on how harm is filtered through legal machinery. Once you understand the machinery, you stop personalizing the outcomes. But even with no charges, there's still a record. There's still a report. There's medical documentation. There's a timeline. There's a case number and a closure designation. Closure is not erasure. And it didn't change my direction. Some people expected me to retreat. They expected me to lash out emotionally. I didn't do either because my direction was already set before that night. The assault didn't redirect me. It confirmed what was going on to me, the environment. It was more of the now what test, right? After the closure came the real question. Now what? Do I go for revenge? Do I go for validation? Do I seek public outrage? Or do I proceed exactly as I already was? I proceeded with the mission as planned, not defiantly, not theatrically, procedurally. Physical harm doesn't restore emotion. People ask the assault brought my emotions back online. No, it reinforced what was already true. Emotion doesn't protect you. Process does. And motherfuckers like to beat up people from behind. Santa Claus is a little bitch who hoed his ass up into my fucking back door and started fucking pounding me on the back of the head and got away with it because the Illyria prosecutor, Amanda Deary, is also a little bitch who doesn't want to fucking prosecute people who she might be friends with. I get how your little fucking rules and circles work, folks. I don't care. I'm not afraid of any of you. Fuck off. Like, I'm sick and tired of your bullshit. Sick and tired of your delays. But what it's taught me about public perception is that some believed me, some didn't. Many speculated, and speculation is noise. I don't do noise. Records are signal. I stay with the signal. So from a system standpoint, the case was closed when discretion was exercised. Fine, Amanda. From a human standpoint, closure is something entirely different. I don't seek human closure from institutions. I seek procedural finality. And it's not going to rebuild my emotion. The assault did not rehumanize the system. The system stayed the system. It filtered harm the way it always does. With that consisting was my lesson. After the assault, after the documentation, after the investigation, after the closure, what remains was the record, the method, the mission. Me. Nothing else changed. So before I go any further, I'm going to pause the story for a minute and not to explain what I did, but to explain how I think. Because if you don't understand the engine, these moves look random, and they're not. They're mathematical, right? I use game theory, as a lot of my friends do. People move on the payoff, not the morals, right? People want to believe that others move on morals. They don't. They move on the payoff. Payoffs can be money, it can be safety, reputation, career survival, avoiding humiliation, avoiding liability. So I never ask, what do you believe, right? I ask, what are you going to gain from silence? What do you gain from the loss of exposure? Or what do you lose? Or what do you have to lose from exposure? What changes if pressure increases or decreases? What collapse will you see if delay becomes visible? Once you map the incentives for the behavior, it becomes boring. Behavior becomes boring, becomes predictable. And that's why emotion is a tactical disadvantage. Emotion leaks strategy, causes premature escalation, overstatement, telegraphing, burning leverage for relief. Game theory requires that you have a delayed gratification. It has to come from long down the road. Tolerance for discomfort. You have to be able to put up with the shit. An ability to sit inside an unresolved pressure, like a pressure cooker. That's why emotionally driven people will always lose in the long games. They want closure. I don't want closure. I want outcome. When you're playing a short games reward speed, right? Long games reward position. Short games give dopamine, and I love dopamine, but long games change systems. Most people want reaction, right? I want inevitability. Occam's razor's theory says it says people, we all love our complex conspiracies, secret masterminds, infinite coordination, perfect hidden systems. It feels intelligent, but it's not. Occam's razor cuts through fantasy. The perfect explanation or the simplest explanation that fits the evidence is usually what's correct, right? The simplest explanation that fits the evidence is usually correct. The simplest explanation that fits the evidence is usually correct. Most corruption is not genius, right? It's career protection. It's risk avoidance. It's fear of exposure. It's bureaucratic inertia. No evil mastermind required, folks. Just misaligned incentives with authority. And that's why I never over-attribute any intent. I don't assume anyone's, as evil. I assume they're either afraid, over-leveraged, professionally trapped, or politically cornered, or all the above. Fear is going to produce misconduct more often than malice. That's not hatred. That's just an observation. So when you add game theory to Occam's razor, it becomes your entire operating model. I don't need secret motives or private whispers or conspiracy theories. I only need public incentives, documented pressure, observable behavior, and recorded reactions. That's it. Once I've mapped all those, the system corrects itself. Not because it grows, concise or becomes more concise, because the payoff structure changes. That's it. Who gets paid, right? And how? Where's the emotional payoff? How and why exposure is always the final leveler, because exposure doesn't attack morality, it rewrites the payoff. Silence becomes costly, delay becomes visible, denial becomes archived, deflection becomes timestamp. People don't change because they become better, right? They change because the game changed. I'm not looking for villains. Villains comfort people. I mean, that's why I don't mind being the villain, because if there's a monster, then the rest of the system seems innocent. I don't deal in monsters. I deal in leverage and incentives. Monsters are rare. You're not going to find them very often, but weak incentives are everywhere. That's why it always works eventually. Game theory doesn't depend on goodwill. Occam razor does not depend on speculation. Together, those two things will eliminate fantasy every single time. They'll reduce everything to pressure, cost, response, and outcome. Pressure, cost, response, outcome. Pressure, response, cost, outcome. I said that differently, but same 4 words. That's why I'm not surprised ever. I'm early. And that's why I look calm when others panic. People think calm is confidence. It's not. Calm is mathematical patience. When you already know how pressure moves people, panic is unnecessary. This is not. Now that you understand how I think and now that you understand the engine, like maybe we can talk a little bit more about king's pawns, time, pressure, and why I no longer, governs anything I touch. When the record starts speaking back, that there comes a moment when the work stops feeling like output and starts feeling like feedback. Not from friends, not from allies, but from the system itself. Because once your documentation goes public, the system begins to respond to you, not formally, not honestly, but behaviorally. The birth of the platform, accidental, not strategic. People think I built a platform as a brand. That's not what happened. I built a storage location for this evidence. First it was just documents, then timelines, then receipts, then logs. Then people start reading. Then people started sharing. Then officials started watching and adding the page. Then, the platform's not created to go viral. It's created because records travel faster than explanations. And that's why most of the records are on there. And the first wave of audience response always looks the same. Some say thank you for saying what we can't. Some say you're finally exposing this. Some say you're brave. But others say you're dangerous, you're obsessed, you're unstable. All of them are projecting something, and they're projecting it on me. And none of them actually know me. Because that's where you're going to learn that audience perception, how you guys see me out there in internet land is not the truth. It's a mirror of your own conflict. It's you against you, folks, not you against me. I'm just an easy person to hate for you. I don't dislike any of you. I don't go around talking crap about any of you. Your names don't come out of my mouth in other circles. That's why I knew I didn't say the things that I said about Tia. Because I don't go around talking about her. I don't go around talking about anyone. Yeah, I do these podcasts because I'm not going to just stand by while people destroy me. But eventually you're going to notice who watches because their behavior changes. Their statements, they tighten. These posts that they're doing, they start to disappear. Their public tone shifts. Their internal emails start to get shorter. Their responses become very lawyered. They don't argue publicly anymore. They adjust quietly. That's how you know the platform has entered protected space, right? That's how I know I'm in protected airspace. Surveillance without uniforms. When people talk about surveillance, they imagine cameras, right? Real surveillance looks like anonymous screen captures, indirect quotes in meetings, unexplained policy changes, sudden legal positioning. Like no one tells you they're watching you, but you can infer it through their behavioral echoes. There's a final threshold that you cross somewhere along the line without ceremony. And that moment when your name becomes searchable, when your filings become archived, when your quotes become permanent, your story becomes reference material. From that moment forward, anonymity is gone, right? You don't go viral, you become indexable. And that's why I can't return to private life. They're like, why don't you just walk away? Well, I can't just walk away now from the public record. My name doesn't just leave the docket. My filings don't just socially expire. The documentation I have doesn't just suddenly unexist, or nor does my responsibility and ethical code and responsibility to report it stop existing. If I stop reporting it, I'm also wrong. So I can't stop speaking because the archive keeps talking. I don't know what to tell you. At some point, you stop functioning as a private individual, not legally, not socially. Everything you say is interpreted as a position, a signal, a threat, a challenge, a move. You stop being allowed casual speech. That's when you know your identity is crossed from a person into the public actor stage. Now, there are always three audiences watching. The supporters who believe in your work. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Darren. The supporters who consume it as entertainment. Yay! I still appreciate you. And then the silent majority who never comment but always watch. And then there's also those public officials that are just out there to get you. Gonna get you. Silent majority never comment, but they always watch. The silent group is the most powerful. They don't amplify, they defend, folks. All right? So they remember. And that's why opponents can never fully attack publicly. Once they operate in public view, the direct attack becomes risky. Everything I do is recorded. Everything I do is timestamped and discoverable. Opposition becomes indirect, insulated, and third-party driven, right? They can't come at me head on. They have to outsource that pressure now. And you see it all the time in the pages. You see the individual attacks. But there becomes a psychological shift in permanent visibility. Like when you realize that you are permanently visible, something changes. You stop preparing for approval. You stop managing reputation. You stop chasing narrative. Stop responding to people on Facebook, and you prepare for your permanence. You start to speak as if every word will exist forever, because it will. And I'm not performing for the audience, because I don't perform for outrage. I don't engineer an emotion. I don't tailor the truth to engagement, because engagement fades, right? Records will not. And these people out here think they're hurting me, but my enemies are the ones validating me, right? The strongest validation that I have doesn't come from supporters. It comes when policies change, language shifts, practices stop, statements reverse, quiet corrections are louder than public apologies. Giving me records suddenly that I asked for 10 months ago shows. Agreement's fragile, guys. Consensus is polite fiction. I don't seek agreement, and I definitely don't seek, polite fiction. I want consistency. If your conduct aligns with your authority, we have no conflict. I don't care. If it doesn't, the record speaks. And there's a lot of loneliness in that, and being a fixed point. I talk about this with Amber a lot. There's a specific loneliness that comes from being unmovable. It's not even an emotional loneliness. It's more of a positional isolation. Everyone else shifts. You stay. You're the rock. And that creates distance between you and everyone. And once the public knows your name, it never forgets, right? I go out, people see me. I saw a fellow social worker the other day, and we were talking, and they were working a second job, and the comment was, we brought up that, I said, yeah, I'm a social worker. And they're like, what's your name? I was like, Aaron. Oh, no. I know what it was. I said, well, yeah, it's hard to get a job when you get the chief of police removed. And she goes, Aaron. She goes, you're doing God's work. And that's true. The platform, though, doesn't just give me a voice. It removed my ability to disappear. From this point on, I'm visible, right? Every action matters. Every silence is a signal. Every document compounds. The stories no longer belong to me. They belong to the record. So once you understand the philosophy, once you understand the chessboard, once you understand game theory and Occam's razor, you'll understand that pressure, payoff, patience, and inevitability. There's only one question left, folks. What now? Not for them, for me. Most people thought that after the conflict with McCann and stuff, I'm gonna either win or vanish, or after the running for office, I'm going to vanish. But I don't do either. I recalibrate, because survival is not the goal. Continuity is, folks. So what I'm building here isn't just a platform. It's an archive. Some people call this a show. Some people call it a podcast, a channel. They don't understand really what you're looking at. This isn't content. This is an archive of institutional behaviors and misbehaviors. It's an indexed memory for a system that benefits from amnesia. When officials reset every election cycle, when administrators rotate, when policies get renamed, when scandals get rebranded, the archive does not forget. I'm training the public, not looking for followers. I'm not building followers. Followers collapse when the leader is gone. And I don't want that. I'm training readers, researchers, requesters, watchdogs, people who don't need me to act, people who act because they know how to act. That's how movements survive decapitation. And people was like, what happens when you stop? Well, the question tells me that they still misunderstand. I don't stop. I replicate the method. There'll be 10 more like me, then 100, then 1,000. Not because they agree with me, but because once you understand how that system works, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, all you do is operate within it. That gives people of both sides of the fence operational power to operate, to make changes within their system as they see fit. That's why it should scare all of you, and all of you should learn it. You learn some game theory and Occam's razor along the way, but why institutions will never fully neutralize this is that you can fire a person, you can smear a person, but you can't, and you can even exhaust them. You cannot neutralize a method once it's in public. Once I put it out there, you can't stop it. You can't unteach it. You can't unteach people how to file for records, how to request records, how to appeal records, how to subpoena. You can't unteach them how to document, how to timeline. how to escalate, how to de-escalate. The gate's open, folks. It doesn't close again. The new generation is going to be way colder than me. I carry memory. I still carry the history. I carry the scars that I brought with me from childhood, from the abuse, the alcoholism, the lack of trust. The ones who come after me are not going to have any of that. The ones who come after me, they're going to be cleaner. They're going to be faster. They're going to be more technical. They're going to be emotionally detached from the old conflicts. They're not going to argue. They will just automate. That's when institutions lose narrative control completely. And this is why I was never about any sort of revenge or anything like that. Revenge loops, folks. It creates more revenge. It creates symmetry to the actions. It's never been revenge for me. It's about directional change. Revenge wants pain returned on people. Change wants conditions removed. And I lost all my professional standing. I lost my income stability. I lost friendships. Rooms I once entered freely. Conversations I once didn't have to fight for. Those weren't sacrifices in the poetic sense, folks. They were the price of moving from internal protection to external enforcement. And I paid it knowingly. And what I gained instead was freedom from permission. And quote these: freedom from permission, freedom from institutional dependence, freedom from career blackmail, and freedom from silence bargains. And that freedom is permanent, folks. That's what I offer to people that I expose. Permanent freedom. The myth of the lone wolf. Well, people think I operate alone, but I don't. I operate as a node. I'm an information node. Information flows in, verification flows out. Quiet collaborators, anonymous sources, exhausted insiders, burned out professionals, whistle adjacent observers. I don't lead them. I give them somewhere to place their truths safely. Why institutions secretly prefer me to random chaos? Well, here's the irony. They fear me, but they fear uncontrolled outrage more. Because I don't destabilize emotionally. I stabilize procedurally. Random chaos for me, and what I see is random chaos burns down systems. Documentation will reform them. What the public still gets wrong is that the public still wants heroes and villains. That's a child's map. Reality is incentives, pressure, risk, survival, reputation, delay, exposure. Once you accept that model, you stop being shocked. And I'm not out here announcing victories because they don't look like wins. They look like, quiet resignation, silent policy edits, training bulletins, insurance shifts, settlement language, budget line moves. The public never applauds those. They're boring. But those are the only victories that matter. The end of, I guess in the end, why am I like this? Well, people ask that. Why are you like this? They think it's my personality. It's not. It's conditioning through war, injury, courts, institutions, massive betrayals, the law, and time. I didn't choose this. I became this. And on the record, I want this on the record. I didn't wake up wanting conflict with anyone. Ever. I woke up wanting stability and integrity, a little bit of ethical order maybe. The conflict arrived when the system couldn't tolerate that demand. I mean, if you're listening now and you're a little bit afraid, if you're listening right now and maybe you've been afraid to speak, I understand. I get it. Fear is a rational thing inside unstable systems. The silence feeds that instability. Documentation starves it. For the record, I'm not your savior. I'm not your enemy. I'm the consequence of systems that forgot they were being watched. Again, I want to say this. I am the consequence of systems that forgot they were being watched. And here's my last lesson to you guys. Power always believes it's permanent, and it never is, ever. Power fades. People die. Regimes fall. Governments fall. States fall. Nations fall. Rome wasn't built in a day. It never is. Only records last. The records of all those civilizations from start to finish, from a rising to falling, those are all in the records, right? The history, the documents of our world. Records will last. Now, as we come to the close here, I know You may never know my name in 10 years from now, right? You may forget my voice. You may forget this series, these arguments, these cases. But the changes that it's forcing, those will be living inside the system. And that's how you know, and will always know I was here. That's what I do. I'm a change agent. So just so you know, folks, this has never been about winning. It's not about being liked. It's not about tearing anyone down. This is about the record over rumor, process over procedure, and change over comfort. You don't have to agree with me. You don't even have to trust me. But from this moment forward, you can no longer say you didn't know who I was, why I'm here, how I move, or why I do what I do. The work continues whether I speak tomorrow or not, because the record doesn't sleep. The systems don't connect themselves, and they don't correct themselves without pressure. If you're watching and you've been afraid to speak, document instead, folks. Just document everything. If you're watching and you've been silent, learn how not to be. If you're watching and you're part of a system that's been getting away with things, understand this. The time for hiding behind complexity is over. I didn't come here for applause. I came here for alignment. That's not for tonight or today, but it will come. But that's going to be it for today, guys. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Hey, Lorraine, be lawful, not awful. And you have a good afternoon, folks. I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into who I am and why I do what I do. And just so you know, no, nothing is absolute. There's reasons why I shift back and forth on narratives. And if you're shutting down before you hear like the endings of statements because you hear things you don't like, you're always going to be disappointed in me. You really need to let me finish because I will always lead with the worst things first. Okay, you get that out. And what I tell people is, if I'm going to criticize someone, I'll lead with criticizing me. It softens the blow. And when you're criticizing people and then propping them up later, that shows that, hey, in my opinion, if somebody could go at you and then later support you, it's better than having someone that's always in your cheer squad, right? Everyone's mom is supposed to applaud for them, but if you can get your worst enemy to love what you did, that's truly amazing. So I want you guys to think about that. When you hear me address people I've had problems with in the past and I still bring up those problems, there's a reason for it. And the reason is that it establishes my credentials to compliment because I see the change. And all I've ever asked for is change. And so if you give me change, I'm going to support that every time. I mean, it's as I've told certain people lately, like, that's why I know a lot of people hated that I kind of forgave Aiden. But all I needed was that apology. I hope now you see at the end here, there's no emotion in that. I don't feel that way about that. I just need the verbal statement made, the recognition made of the institutional damage done to my reputation. I never said those things about Tia. That's been regurgitated by even the people who even reported it at the time. They've retracted those statements of guilt. So I want you to think about it maybe from Amber's perspective. Amber sees a guy that's being run through the ringer, through the Lorraine court system for a crime that he did not do, people trying to go after him. Does that sound like something she might associate with? Oh, yeah, maybe, because of her mom, right? That's how trauma works. That's how people bond. That's how things are changed. And so, that's why we're at where we're at. That's why we're here today. So just know that I don't say things that seem negative about people I don't care about. If I don't care about you, I barely speak about you. The only times I speak about you is after you've done something. So you notice, like, I don't really speak about the detractors. Every once in a while, I'll post something up to respond because you don't give me an opportunity to respond to you. But once I block someone, I typically don't talk to them. The only reason I started addressing that certain person, TH, was because she was publicly attacking me and going after me criminally. If you don't matter to me, you don't matter. So just know that if I'm talking about someone like a JD, it's because I hold these offices to be, like holier than thou. And I expect certain things out of them. So it does break my heart when people don't achieve the successes that I think they should or I want them to achieve. But don't assume that any judgment of somebody is a distaste, dislike, or hatred of an individual. Because I hate no one. I believe that exposing fault, exposing their own individual lives, because we all lie to ourselves. Once you can accept that, you can be free of that, and you can be armored in the truth. And truth is justice. And justice is the only way you're going to get it. And the only way to get that is through documentation, folks. And that's what I'm going to continue to do is document. I cannot tell you guys this enough. Personally, I don't know any of you, most of you. Sure, some people now invested in their story. You'll see me. Certain people. Mr. Palams, his story. Mr. Mauricio, his story. Miss Brownish. All these people. They're all, their stories matter. And the reason why they matter is because they came to me and they asked me who I was. They learned about me and I learned about them. And I'm sharing their stories. Okay, so for people who think, again, I could do a lot with an apology, Mr. Moreau. I could do a lot with an apology, Mr. Thomas. But I get it. These people were controlled by situations outside of their control. And I understand that. I've also told some of my friends lately, like, your reasoning for doing it doesn't matter. Because, again, as I said when I let people beat the crap out of me, like, I can't control you. I can only control me. I can't stop you from doing what you're going to do. What I can, however, do is stop me, right? Like, I have a choice. I have a decision to make in how I act in this moment. Sometimes I don't make the best choices, but I try, as we all do. And when I don't, I'll call myself out. So just know that and be with me on this. Just know that I don't dislike anyone here. I like this community. I'm raising my daughter here. Like, I'm trying to fix the roads. I'm trying to fix the schools. And for every bit that you see online, it's just that, a bit. As I told you in the beginning, choose which one is going to be the most, the personality that's going to work today. I can be therapist Aaron for some people. Some people, when I talk to them about therapy, they get the little bits from me and they're like, wow, that's amazing. You think like that. Well, yeah, because I have all these books back here for social work. I did actually get a degree in that. Like, I'm good at that. If you want therapist Aaron, before McCann and everyone ruined my ability to do that, I was awesome at that job. I worked great with kids. Now I can't get a job to save my fucking life. So I'm just going to have to go back on my full-time disability. Basically, what James McCann did was destroyed a person's professional career with no reasoning behind it. And it's a career that doesn't get paid much, $50,000, $60,000 a year to work full-time, to give up hours, to be in juvenile justice, to be part of your community. I've worked with the people in your community. That's why I'm such a big advocate for the African-American community, because they make up 22% of the juvenile justice population when they only make up 2% of the population and 12% of the juvenile population. No, wait, I'm sorry. They make up 12% of the population, 22% of the juvenile population, and I think it's 44% of the juvenile justice population or something like that. I don't know. It's huge. So, again, statistically per capita, they can't do that. But that was a taxonomy I was working with as a social worker, and James McCann stole that from me. He stole it. Say what you will, he stole it. And yeah, I got mad. Maybe I did do, I definitely wanted James terminated because I told him in the beginning via email, this is going to result in both of us being terminated, but you're going to dislike it more than me. And he said, whatever, I have the email somewhere, and here we are. I can predict the results because game theory and Occam's razor tells me what the results are going to be. And they were. So when I tell you guys online I'm doing something, just know that that's what it's going to be. Like, I'm not lying about the gun law thing, and they know it, and they know they're going to lose that. And Buckeye Firearms has reached out to me already. You guys can hate me all you want for that, but I'm right. I'm not looking for, pats on the back like the city council is. I want everything to be in order. I want consequences to actions that I can document. I want to be able to say, yes, that's the consequence. But see, here in Lorain, that's not how it works. In Lorain, they let Rivera's off with, that was a bullshit call. I'm going to get remind me again. We got to get the criminal report on that one. We had the case on Rivera because, I mean, again, what was it? Failure to control or some shit like that. They dropped and they just gave him like illegal crossing of the line or something. He damaged 2 cars, smashed into a shed, 2 cars, and then fled the scene. It was felony level crap while intoxicated in a city vehicle, and they did nothing. Nothing. I mean, these things should be concerning you. And again, the Nietzsche's of the world who hold no positional power should concern you. You know, the way Jack Hall discarded me should concern you. The fact that he had me do that SF 400 should concern you. The way Mr. Solo treats people, treating Amber, treating me should concern you. Again, I don't believe they should be going after JD anymore. Let it the fuck go. You lost. You know, it's the same thing I said on the Hildreth incident to the cops. Let it the fuck go. You lost. Once they got inside, you screwed up. If you're charging them with a bullshit charge, and I know you lost. That's why they tried to charge. That's why they charged Mom with destruction. That's why they're going after JD now on procedural bullshit. Because the procedural bullshit, what it allows them to do is say, he's a shitty person. He's a shitty attorney. He violated his oath of office or some crap like that. And by doing so, we can invalidate his other concerns. But they're never, ever, 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 ever going to undo that Nancy Smith verdict. You can delay it, and hope that bad things happen. But in the end, you're never going to undo what JD did, ever. He did an amazing thing there. He solidified what should have been done a long time ago. He exonerated the woman. And in the end, you're never going to undo it. JD, I don't care if you're out there listening right now. This is the one thing I'll say to you. It sucks being a pariah. Trust me. I know. I know, bro. But if there's one thing I've learned is this. You can hold on to your good deed for dear life. Because no matter what, Amber and Nancy will love you, faults and all, for all eternity. And what I've always told people about things like that is sometimes you're not lucky enough to be aware of the good deeds you've done and how they affect people. In this case, you are. You get to see the fruits of your labors in Amber roller skating and Nancy taking pictures and hanging out with her daughter and all of that. You get to see that. So while others may look at you as a pariah, I don't. I mean, hey, so what if you lost? So what if I fought against you? That's the policy, right? That's politics. Aiden Fogel fought against me, and I can still say, good job, Aiden, on winning his election. I think that's all part of the game. In the end, for me, the end result, the win, the victory is further down the road. And I think you're going to find that that is for you too. If you're one of the warriors that they're coming after, if you know, the Rosenbaums and the Whites and the Silos and all these different people of the world, like all these people I don't know, but everyone seems to know that you're supposed to be afraid of, are coming after you, just know something, bro. Like if you don't matter, they don't come after you. So in the grand scheme of things, that's all you need to do, bro. That's it. Just weather the storm, man. Because I've reviewed this case. I don't find that your prosecutor over and whatever. Because again, I'm the one that broke it. I'm the one that got it from the Attorney General. They don't have anything. And I know they can't do it because they're now conflicted with you. Both those agencies are conflicted with you. Which again, I go back to the Garen Petty case. If you were conflicted now, you were conflicted then. So how could you submit an investigation, Sheriff Hall, on JD if you're conflicted? And how could Tony Solo submit that investigation to the Attorney General if he's conflicted? And how could the Attorney General take it from Tony Solo if he's now conflicted because of Tony Solo? And how could he send it to the other prosecutor if they're all conflicted? Sounds like a whole bunch of conflicted, and math and confliction don't work. It's not two negatives equal a positive. So again, why are you trying to retry a case? It sounds like not prosecutorial misconduct as much as ineptitude. How many times y'all gonna lose before you realize, stop? So again, but don't assume because I criticize someone that I don't like them. Don't assume because I criticize somebody that I give two craps about them, or that I don't give two craps about them. I don't have any of those feelings about anything. Okay? That's it. Like I tried to explain it to you, the emotional disconnect on that. I do actively get upset when I don't take my meds. It sounds like anger, but it's just disruption. It's me yelling to silence the noise. But once I take my meds, the noise goes away. And then it's silenced. So I had no feelings for that or you or any of it. All I know is the rules, right and wrong. That's it. And I present what I think is gonna, whatever you want. I'm a chameleon. Whoever I need to be for you. Do I need to be the guy that's talking like this? I need to be the guy that's like, Ellen, thank you for calling LSS 211 Central Ohio. This is Aaron speaking. How may I assist you? Do I need to be therapy, Aaron? So, like, let's talk about that. Why don't you tell me how that makes you feel? Okay. Well, no, those are valid feelings. So what I think I hear you saying is active listening skills. I can be all those people. I can be the guy that's online yelling and screaming. You guys don't tune in for that. Like, I see the numbers. You just don't tune in for that. Because when I'm being fiery and when I'm being crazy, people come online because they want that gossip piece. They want to be able to call up all the people they know and say, oh, did you see what Aaron said? You see what Aaron did? You see what Aaron said? You see what Aaron was doing? For a guy who doesn't matter, you motherfuckers are sure up on my shit all the time. Jesus Christ. Again, I got people out there calling me crazy. I mean, honestly, of all the people that are going to call me in 1096, 5150, or any of that shit, shouldn't be Patrick Horn. Dude, you're a spineless coward. Like, I believe I know who you are now. I think you talked to me outside of Southside meeting once. You're like the neighborhood block commander guy or whatever. You drove around in your station wagon or something. I mean, again, I understand why Bravo males attack me. I get it. It's okay. It happened with McCann. It happens with you. It's happening with Carry On. I get it. You guys all think you have a right to speak to me a certain sort of way, all while proclaiming your freedom of speech without freedom of and expecting freedom of consequence. That's not how it works. Be a man, Patrick, and if you have something to say to me, why don't you just say it the next time you see me at a council meeting? I've already established we're not going to fight. We're just going to have a verbal conversation that you're going to probably lose. That's it. Never going to, like Mary tried to make it. He said he was going to confront me. Not personally. Like,
so we got here. What is the Diddy blood doing on the calculator? And blood Epstein. What is the Diddy blood doing on the calculator? Is what?
That means. Bottom line is, folks, is I'm here to stay. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm supporting Amber in her quest to continue bringing her story to light. And any feelings I have about JD in regards to what he did or didn't do in regards to me is nobody's business but mine. My personal issues that come from being not heard. Now, again, I'll go back to saying, when I say as a therapist, I understand everything's about how I feel. Everything's about how you feel. I'll sit there and tell somebody, well, he had a lot of other things on his mind. He had all these other people attacking him. I get that, but I'm selfish. I wanted me. And I get it. But that's selfish, Aaron. But you're being selfish when you say me. The loudest me gets the me. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. I'm a squeaky ass wheel. I want to get greased like a stuck pig. So that brings us to almost our 2-hour mark. It's a Saturday, so whatever. You guys have anything better to do, right? You're going to watch the OSU game tonight, OH. As my shirt says, embrace the suck. I hope you have a better understanding of me and how I operate. Just know that I don't hate or dislike any of you. Any of you. All I feel is your energy and your intent. As long as you're not coming in my lane, you notice I don't come in yours. Every single one of these things that I've addressed has either been governmental or institutional. The only time any of you get addressed is when you're stupid enough to stray into my lane. I don't come online and seek you out and attack you. I don't come online and do these things. But someone told me the worst punishment ever. They had someone that that was, trying to do something online to me, and they were like, "Are you going to kick me out of the group?" And he was like, "No, worse, I'm going to leave your comments up and let Aaron do what he does. I may not do this, folks, but this and this and this I got covered." So just know that, folks. I got all those avenues covered. The mouth, the intelligence. And if you don't believe it, then why was the sheriff asking for my advice? Why was the sheriff utilizing me in his campaign? As I said in that last podcast, why was I the envelope for everything he was doing? If these people aren't scared of me, why do they bring 3-4 lawyers to every confrontation we have? Why do they bring them into public records meetings? Why do they not own and offer up public records meetings to anyone? Yeah, I know where I'm at. Shut up. So they keep doing it, folks. And they're going to keep doing it until you call them out. So, you can go check out my records thing that I have. I have a records thing online that I posted on the back of my page. Make sure you guys check that out. That's going to be your guide on how to request public records and document. Anyway, guys, thanks you for tuning in today. That's your story. That's all about Aaron. In the meantime, please make sure to document everything. Stay lawful, not awful. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
And then we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the